One. Brilliant. So, firstly, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. And thank you for joining us today. It's always wonderful to see our wonderful leaders and community come together. And a big thank you to Josh and Vandana, the chair and co-chair of the Content and Research Committee, for taking out time and joining me today. I'll be really facilitating this session, and they'll be providing a lot of interesting and insightful information in terms of the session proposals and what goes along with it. But selfishly, and as the chair of the 2023 Annual IC3 Conference and Expo, I think I'm always very eager to share my excitement about the conference. And so, with your permission, Josh and Vandana, I'm going to take a few minutes before we kick off and share some insight and some information about the conference. So firstly, as many of you may know, and if you don't know, then this is for you. But we are headed back to the wonderful city of Hyderabad. And for anyone who thinks it's just another conference in Hyderabad, it certainly isn't the case. It's going to be bigger. We're going to push the boundaries, and we have the entire convention center at our disposal this year. So it's really exciting. The expo will be even bigger, and there's a big opportunity for people to come together and engage, and the corridors are going to be buzzing as they always are. So really excited to be back in Hyderabad for the conference this year. And for the first time, we also are going to have the presidential forum simultaneously happen with the conference. And I think this is another amazing initiative that we are going to be a part of. So with that, I think it's also the first time we're going to be having a very interesting and exciting initiative that is the fundraising concert. So we're going to have a concert that's going to be fundraising for the institute. The institute does some amazing work, including running some pre-conference workshops for counselors before the conference. And they this year again are pushing boundaries despite all the work that they do through the year, and are actually going to have a pre-conference workshop for universities as well. So for colleagues who are here from universities, I think please do take a look at that. It's going to be amazing. And it's a great initiative from the Institute to organize that as well. It goes without saying, really, we do have a super early bird and early bird deadline to register this year. So really make use of those benefits. It'll help you organize your accommodation and also avail other financial benefits as well. So I think as an action item for everyone here, if you haven't really take a look at registering, it just helps your process out as well. But the reason we're here today, and the most important and fundamental component of a successful conference, and what's really at the heart of the conference, is the content and the sessions, and that really is fundamental to making the conference the hub for learning and knowledge that it is always been. And that's why we're here. We're going to be doing another session in a few weeks as well, closer to the deadline for session proposals. But I just want to share my experience with you all. And when I first attended the conference, I think, I was just out of university, and there was a hesitation in terms of assuming what am I going to bring to the session. And there's so many other capable leaders who are going to be proposing sessions as well. um, I would say we love for new voices, we love for new ideas, we love for new perspectives, exploring the themes that we're going to be talking about today from a different perspective, a new voice. So certainly, if you haven't spoken, that in fact is amazing, and we really want you to come out and send us that proposal. And it's not always the case that your proposal is going to be chosen. I can tell you myself, over the years I've had many proposals that I've submitted in terms of content over the years, and they haven't gone through. So that shouldn't be a hindrance. That should be a motivating factor for you to go ahead and really put forward a strong proposal in the future. So if you want some inspiration, and I would request the team here maybe just to put down a link to the YouTube channel where there are some examples of sessions, and really go through them. You can seek some inspiration from those pre-recorded sessions that we have, and I think that's just a nice way to start off your journey in terms of collaborating content as well. So I will now pass it on to Josh, but just before I do that, I just want to highlight one particular page that I think Vandana will speak about later in the session. But there's something called a collaborative sheet that's there for session proposals on the website. And that's a really a place where if you don't know who to collaborate with, or whoever you've spoken to maybe has already committed to proposing another session or isn't comfortable, whatever the reason may be, if you're looking for people to collaborate with, I think that's a great place for you to start. You'll find I've already put down my details there. I think Josh has as well. And you can start reaching out to people. What I will say is that just bear in mind that putting your name down in this Excel sheet does not mean you've submitted a session. That's just a way for you to collaborate. You do need to go through the formal process of sending through a proposal, and it's an extremely fair process um, that we follow. And so, really encouraging everyone, whether you're an experienced counselor or a new counselor, experienced university admissions officer or not, there really should be no barrier for you to go ahead and submit a strong proposal. So with that, I think I'm going to bring Josh into the conversation and really help go through the content that we want to today. So, Josh, just give me a second as I share my screen, and with a thumbs up from you, if my screen is visible. Perfect. So I'll hand over to you, Josh.
Well, thank you so much. Before I begin with any sort of comments, I should offer a brief introduction of myself. For those of you who have not met me, either virtually or in person, my name is Joshua Craig. I am a proud member of the IC3 community. I'm really delighted to have served as a chair of the Content and Research Committee for the past number of years. I really want to begin by echoing what Vir has said in that folks like perhaps myself and my wonderful co-chair, who we'll hear from soon, Vandana, come to the table with lots of experience. But there was a time where we didn't have that experience. And I can say that when I was a very new representative for the University of Toronto, had never really represented the university outside of Canada, I found myself in one of my first trips to India. And within a very short while, a counselor who many of us know, Amrita Gulati, invited me to join her committee, which she was chairing, which was the Content and Research Committee. And I thought, very much like what Vir said, well, gosh, what can I bring to the table? What a lovely vote of confidence, but really, how can I help? And very quickly realized that, being a part of the IC3 community is a place where both new voices and experienced individuals have a say and have something to contribute. And so if you're experienced or a newer member of the community, please, delighted to know that you're here, and please do take what we say today with all seriousness. We're delighted to hear from all of you. Specifically today, we really are going to go over sort of what makes a successful proposal, what the committee members of the committee that Vandana and I chair are really looking for when we're looking at content. And we are blessed and cursed, I often say in this committee. The blessing is that we have an overabundance of world-class content. The curse is that we have an overabundance of world-class content. This creates a very challenging environment for us to really vet the kind of material, and it's a wonderful position to be in, but it's a lot of hard work, and it's you folks that make it hard, and I'm glad you do. You put together amazing proposals, and hopefully today we'll give you a few hints as to what really may tip the scales. Specifically, the items we're going to go over, you can see on the screen now. In a moment, I'll turn it over to Vandana, and she'll take a look at our theme and sub-themes, and then I'll take a quick peek at general annual conference guidelines. We'll discuss proposal components, so specifically the components of the proposal. We'll look at diversity and perspective, which we've alluded to before. Again, highlight some of the resources that were mentioned off the top by Vir, and then conclude just before some open question and answer period with some important dates. So with that, we can go to the next slide, and I welcome Vandana to the hot seat.
Oh, come on. Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction as well as my introduction. So, hello, all. I am Vandana, and already Josh has given my introduction as well. I head the Career and College Guidance Department at the Emerald Heights International School in Indore. And with IC3, I started my journey. Right from the beginning, I've been very actively attending all the IC3. The moment I stepped into my counseling department, I think I was very much clueless and directionless where I have to go. And it was where when I found some solace in IC3 content. I remember when I was told to actually enter into the outreach committee. And while I said no, I have found my soulmate in content of the IC3. So I want to be into IC3 content and research committee itself. So as Josh said that this is abundance, I would also say this is the heart of the conference. The content that we create actually makes the buzz in the main conference. And that's why we are talking about the content and the session proposals in advance. Apart from everything else, I think we should actually focus our thoughts, power, knowledge, energy, each and everything coming together as mindfulness and finding our own niche, where can we actually share our knowledge with. So for this particular conference, the entire theme is, the broader theme is finding purpose through counseling. So usually, what happens is that the school-based career and college counseling is considered as much more than the administrative function. When implemented intentionally and authentically, our counseling can actually leverage the experiences, outcomes, not only in the student's life, but also in school and even transform the society, as we will be able to launch great youth on the critical journey of discovering their purpose in their own lives. And therefore, the theme finding purpose through counseling is intended to inspire us all, we all, the great educators, to unleash the full potential inside each and every student through school-based counseling. Under this broad umbrella of finding purpose through counseling, there are 6 sub-themes: ethics in counseling, creating context through counseling, counseling as a shared responsibility. I'm sure this is my favorite one. Access. Then we have leadership and counseling, foundations and trends. Let us very quickly walk through each of these sub-themes. Ethics in counseling. This is the sub-theme which actually aims to put focus into the ethical demands which we face day to day in our day-to-day lives, with a spotlight on the responsibility to provide unbiased guidance in the best interest of the student. The sub-theme also seeks to explore best practices and ethical standards for our relationships and interactions between schools and universities, as well as the third-party organizations. It also aims to address ethical dilemmas that we face and encounter in our profession, and to offer guidance and solutions to these scenarios as they arise. It could even come out, the solutions could even come out of our own experiences, or maybe our experiences from our colleagues. The second sub-theme is creating context through counseling. This is again very, very important. Learning outcomes in schools can be profoundly impacted when academic learning is actually contextualized through counseling. This sub-theme is intended to offer strategies to counselors in offering broader context to post-secondary studies, bridging considerations of potential courses of study and future careers, and also career-related outcomes. Given the rapid and ongoing changes in our world, especially after the pandemic, the aim is to actually ensure that the counselors are well equipped to handle the students' queries, confusions, doubts, and also handle parents intentionally and holistically. Perspectives, experiences, and data from education, as well as the industry, will enrich discussions around this sub-theme. The third sub-theme is counseling as a shared responsibility. I said this is my favorite one. The bureaucratic nature of many schools actually lead to a compartmentalized structure in which career and college counseling is often viewed as a separate entity from academic learning and other critical functions in the school. This sub-theme is intended to inspire discussions about how to advance counseling as a shared responsibility within each and every school, and also the departments where administrators and teachers are also deeply invested in counseling practices and pedagogies. This sub-theme will also challenge universities to shift their relationships with schools from transactional in nature to those based on empowerment. We did a wonderful, in my own school, we did a wonderful session yesterday with all the management and also the teachers, and we talked a lot about how is counseling a shared responsibility. And again, all thanks to IC3. Then the next theme is access. Each student actually has the right to obtain guidance from people like us who are qualified and informed counselors. Each counselor also has the fundamental need to gain this knowledge and expertise in order to best advise his or her students. These cornerstones of development in young adults cannot exist without access. Access moves beyond the advising of students, touching all aspects of post-secondary experiences. Information also plays a fundamental role in the growth and guidance process. So this sub-theme explores the various points of access and resources available to students and also to school-based counselors like us, while creating space for discussions on best practices, best initiatives, with the aim of making post-secondary and career paths accessible to all. The next sub-theme is leadership and counseling. This sub-theme aims to highlight the critical role played by school and the university leaders in the state of affairs of career and college guidance globally, and also to guide leaders to elevate their schools and institutions by investing more time, more resources, and space in the curriculum for counseling. Sessions related to this sub-theme should present research, data, and experiences that demonstrate the benefits of authentic and dedicated counseling efforts within the school setting. Additionally, this sub-theme can also demonstrate how university leaders can bolster international enrollment outcomes through a fresh approach of recruitment and outreach. And the last sub-theme is foundations and trends. It is critical for all of us, whether we are counselors or university representatives, to keep pace with the changing landscape of higher education. Additionally, this field has welcomed many newcomers over the past year, and there is a need for foundational training on best practices, academic systems in secondary and tertiary education, etc. This sub-theme is intended to create a platform through which foundations and current trends in recruitment, admissions, and career and college counseling in general could be explored. So these were the sub-themes, and I think without further ado, over to Josh.
Thank you so much. And surprise, surprise, the first sort of point in the general guidelines, the sort of things that we're generally looking for when someone's putting together a proposal is the theme. I know that in the past, in my own professional experience, I've seen a conference that I wanted to attend, or maybe a conference I was thinking of putting a proposal forward, and very often, and I admit this. With a degree of embarrassment, I sort of glossed over the themes. Yeah, okay. I'll find a way to say what I want to say and shoehorn it into one of these themes. The theme was the sort of the tertiary concern of mine, the secondary concern of mine. And really, I want to highlight just how critical these themes are. One of the very first things that the members of our committee are doing when they're reading a session proposal is seeing how that session proposal is anchored in the theme and the sub-themes. It's absolutely critical. The themes exist for very specific reasons. Most notably to offer harmony amongst not only our regional forum content, but ultimately the annual conference as well. This is the sort of the anchor point that offers that congruency throughout the work of the IC3 for the year. But the themes also act as guides, sort of providing parameters and boundaries for our content. And the reason for that is really to ensure that not only is the content targeted, but that it's not repetitive. The luxury a number of years ago was that the IC3 was still such a new movement that repetition wasn't a concern. Well, now, the head of steam that IC3 has created, and the number of successful year after successful years that have passed, gosh, we find ourselves maybe in the enviable position of saying, we don't want to repeat content from past years. And again, that's a lot of hard work, but it's a good place to be. Clarity and focus would be the next sub-theme. And this is sort of one of the two areas that when I'm assessing a session proposal that I really look at. A strong proposal is very simply one which leaves our team with very few questions about its subject, its goal, and its scope. When I finish reading a proposal and I go back and look at it as a whole, the fewer questions I have, the stronger that session will be rated. The reason I bring this up is that I find it's all too easy for a session proposal to grow beyond its original scope or beyond the format that is provided by the conference or the theme or the subject matter. And again, I think this comes from a well-intended place. I think experienced professionals are always happy to offer more, and they're easily connecting dots as they weave the story of their proposal. But very quickly, it can grow beyond that scope. And again, we're looking for something that's targeted, and we're looking for something that, again, leaves our team with very few questions. The challenge when we get something that's vague or that is sort of a, for lack of a better example, seems like a first draft, is that, the next session proposal we're going to read is incredibly focused. It's incredibly well tuned. It's incredibly honed. And automatically, we're going to have more confidence in a proposal that is packed with detail in the early stage. Now, that is a segue into the next point here, which is detail. And I really want to encourage everybody attending not to be afraid of detail. If you provide detail and focus in your session proposal, it does not mean that you are marrying yourself to that and those points alone. Changes really can be made, and feedback from the committee should be expected. There's nothing wrong with offering a great degree of detail, and then even after a proposal has been accepted, saying, look, as I'm working through this, I'm thinking I may have to adjust this or that. That's part of the process, but that detail is a critical component to the initial assessment. So vague proposals, as I sort of alluded to earlier, are always going to be overlooked for those that offer specifics. And again, being specific in no way weakens or limits the final session. And I think that's certainly something I've struggled with in the past professionally is, gosh, if I'm too specific, I've offered too much, and then I won't have the flexibility to grow the presentation or the proposal as I develop it. And that's just not the case. Being specific really does offer our committee a clear and solid foundation upon which to assess the proposed content. I'm going to give you an example that I actually give in our internal committee training that is so critical. The number of times I've read a session proposal where the details of the person putting the proposal together are left blank. And then as I think, well, who wrote this? Who is the session proposer? What is their professional background? What is their name? What is their contact information? It's all blank. Of course, in digging deeper, there's a spot earlier in the session proposal where they can say who they are. And in sort of, I think in many cases, this person is taken for granted. Well, I've already completed this information, so I don't have to repeat it. Keep in mind, our committee only sees certain parts of the session proposal. We're only given the meat of the proposal. So if you're asked to provide your contact details, your name, your professional background, even if you've provided it in another way, when maybe registering, please include it again, because that is the segue to the final general guideline here, which is voice. One of the major considerations our committee is looking at is who is speaking, who's composing the panel or the presentation panel. Who are going to be the folks delivering this content. Now, as Vir alluded to off the top, we are looking for experienced members of the community, but we're looking for new voices. So one of the things I encourage seasoned IC3 presenters, consider adding a new voice to your panel. This is what makes the collaboration document so helpful. If you're putting together a session proposal and you've presented in the past, or you're a longstanding member of the community, one of the things you could look at to strengthen your proposal is adding a new voice, inviting someone who you haven't seen or met before to join. So take the time to go through that collaboration document and maybe identify some folks that you think may really add value to your proposal. The CNR committee really needs a full outline of those panel members. We're looking specifically at their biographies, their professional background, because these voices are so critical to the content. And the final thing here is really we're looking for a diversity of voice. And we do touch on diversity a bit later, but what I really want to say is it can't be overstated that a diverse roster of speakers is crucial to any session proposal. We want to make sure that the people who are chatting are not all counselors from one school or all university reps from a single university, because that doesn't provide the breadth of perspective that would be required. Okay, I'll turn the mic back over to Vandana.
Thank you, Josh. You've really very wonderfully covered the details of the session proposal, what makes a session proposal very strong, and also you've encouraged each one of us to continue proposing, at least curating the content irrespective of the outcomes. Even I remember that in the past, while reviewing the sessions, we've had some really wonderful sessions, but some information was missing, and I think those were left just because of those small reasons. So therefore, it is critical for all of us to actually understand that each and every component of the session proposal is equally important in presenting also. It's not only to get selected or rejected, it's also about your intent. What are you trying to put up? What will be the takeaways out of the session? What value will it add to the conference and also to the people attending it? So it is critical that we talk about each of these components one by one. So the very first component is session title. Now this is the USP. USP means the unique selling point of our session. This is the introduction to our topic, which has to be the eye catcher and also the captivating thing. It will be in many ways, somewhere the selling point of our session. The title should be very clear, descriptive, and also very captivating. So creating a title for the forum of attendees. Think of creating a title for the forum of attendees and not for the content and research committee. This is one thing that we need to bear in mind. Then the second component is session brief. Now, this is the real bulk of the proposal, the life of our session, the life of the content of the session. Therefore, we need to be sure that we consider all the points in rough first. What are we trying to actually cover in this session? Jot down all those points beforehand, and then take all the points from the previous slide that we just spoke about related to clarity, detail, and scope when composing your brief, and then put your brief in such a manner that the reader gets a complete overview of what the session is going to talk about and what the attendees are going to take from this session. Then the next component is the sub-theme. Now, this is also very important. We need not leave the theme as an afterthought. The themes should be a part of what is guiding our proposal, rather than something which is just a shoehorned as a final step. And this sub-theme should actually also be a segue to our session brief. Then, as Josh said, that the speakers are very, very important. The professional experiences of the speaker, their profile, their bio profile, their institutions, maybe their demographic locations, each and everything matters to us. So the speaker details should be highlighted. Highlight the importance of the panel members as well, or who are going to be your presenters. the session reviewer will see, is there a diversity of experience? Do the speakers complement each other in terms of their professional backgrounds? Do they actually echo with the theme? Do they echo with the session abstract? So many things. So speaker details should be really highlighted very, very clearly. In case maybe you have some abstract in your mind and you don't have a proper person in your mind, feel free to write down to be decided or please suggest. I think the committee is more than happy to suggest you some appropriate speaker based on your session or the needs of your session. And then this next component is target audience. Does your proposal target counselors? Will it cater to the university representatives more? Will it be school administrators? Who are the people who will benefit the most from this session? If you are targeting counselors, but not mentioning counselors very clearly, I think it can again be marked as a little bit of negative thing. Though we are more than happy while reviewing to reach out to the proposals and make additional comments while this, but it is always good to be very cautious, very clear right in the first submission itself. Then comes the session format. Now, session formats are of two types here with us. One is the presentation thing, and second is the panel discussion. So if you feel that your session abstract, your topic demands something like the dissemination of information or research findings, or maybe you're trying to bring out some facts on surface, you're talking about some procedures or processes, then presentation model works better. And in this model, the maximum number of presenters should be 3, including your moderator. And if you feel that you want to bring out some kind of interactive discussions of ideas, maybe some experiences, some best practices, some initiatives out of your own experiences or study, I think then the better way is to go ahead with panel discussions, where we have diverse set of speakers and more of diverse experiences come in. Again, here maximum presenters could be 4, 3 panelists and 1 the moderator. So I think that helps us. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer. But I do want each one of you to understand that each and every component plays a pivotal role for the reviewer. So please be cautious. And this is not an evaluation, a hard evaluation. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you feel you want to, discuss further about any of these components or any of the session proposal confusions related queries. We are more than happy to answer, even while you are in process of working on your submissions or the proposals. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks so much. I have to admit, I've said this a million times and I'll say it again. There's nothing worse than following up someone like Vandana because she's always so succinct and so clear. And I'm always got, gosh, okay, all right, I got to measure up here. So thank you for that great breakdown, Vandana. So I'm going to talk about diversity and perspective, and I'm going to be very frank with you all. When I am in a webinar, when I am in a professional development session, and I see the word diversity, I kind of cringe. And the reason I cringe is not because diversity isn't important. It's because I think words like diversity and perspective are so frequently used in professional environments over the past 20 years for the right reasons, that they've become buzz terms and they start to ring a little hollow. And so what I'm hoping to do in this case is to really say, what do I mean when I say we're looking for diversity and perspective? It's easy for me to say, yeah, diversity, perspective, that's really important. What do I really mean? And diversity is a term that, while perhaps a little bit overused these days, or perhaps poorly defined in context these days, in all professional contexts, we're really looking at it hitting 2 key components or key places in the context of our IC3 content. And the first is regional diversity. Now, this is a relevant point when we talk about curating content for our regional forums, but it changes nothing about its importance when we look at the annual conference. Folks, IC3 is global. It covers an enormous part of the counseling and secondary and post-secondary community around the world. And so when you're putting together a session proposal, I want you to be thinking about how does this content ring true in a global environment, not just in my little niche or area. And if your proposal is discussing a specific area, universities, say from a particular study destination, we want to make sure that you're taking that information and making it globally accessible. How does this information impact a student from one area of the world versus another? So that diversity is really important. Each region really has its own needs, it has its own strengths, and all of these proposals really need to consider this regional diversity as a paramount component of their content proposal. The second key point here is the diversity of speakers, which we've alluded to a half dozen times now, but I'll take a moment to highlight it again. Each session really should include one high school counselor. And I'm going to say that again. We're really looking for each session to include at least one voice from the counseling community. I always try and go back to what the founding principle of IC3 is, and it's a mission of bringing counseling to every school. And as such, counselors' voices are an inextricably important part of everything that we do. The professional development of counselors is a paramount component of every session. And so even as a university representative, and I always use that as an example because that's the point of view that I come from, when I'm putting together a session proposal, I think, okay, what value add does a counselor voice have here? Where in this proposal can I invite a counselor to come in? It may be as simple as a counselor to come in and say, absolutely, from this high school perspective, this is why when a university does X, Y, and Z, that's so important. So please keep in mind that's critical. And so again, sort of as a final point here, perhaps I'll make one other note here, and that is that when we're looking at proposals, we're looking to see a diversity of target audience as well. And this would be maybe the last note of diversity I want to highlight. In years past, IC3 has been greatly blessed with an enormous number of session proposals that target the new counselor, that target new members of the community. And I would say that year over year, 2/3 of the proposals that we receive are targeting that new audience. And what we really need is to also focus on the professional development of experienced counselors as well. We need to focus on the professional development of those school administrators who have that shared counseling responsibility. So this is an invitation that, if you're an experienced member of the IC3 community or an experienced professional, don't just think about how your content can assist a new member of the community. Think about how that content and your perspective and your experience can benefit your peers, people with the same amount of experience or more than you. How can you speak truth to power? How can you deliver some perspective to the school administrators? So I really want to encourage the folks here today and the folks that you may speak to after today's session, look at how you can create some content for those experienced members of the community, because we really need that diversity in perspective for audience members. Okay, almost finished our presentation here. I'll turn it over to Vandana one more time to talk about these all-important resources.
Thank you so much, Josh. In fact, I would just want to add one thing. When I heard you've spoken very well about the diversity and all, and you've also very well covered that everybody should at least put forth, and experienced counselors can think of putting through advanced session proposals. I would also say that the newbies who are looking for, who are intending to think it that ways, that at least let 2-3 of you unite, create a session, and then just mention there that how you can, you can empathize with someone from the audience who is into the same boat, and they will be benefited with your experiences. I think it happens that some newbies will not be very freely open to, learning from experience because of some kind of, fear of being judged or so. But you can very well chime with the same cohort. So just feel free to mention that in your session submission, in your session abstract also, so that we understand what is your thought beyond it. And we can just see how we can look into your proposal while reviewing the session. So now coming to these resources, whatever we have spoken, I think some of you might have made some notes. The recording will also be available. However, you can again go through all these pointers through these wonderful resources, which are just available on one click. Call for proposals. The link is there in the chat box, and you can read all the things that are necessary. Then you can read all the theme descriptions that we spoke about today. And then this is something very important, which is collaboration sheet. As we mentioned, that this sheet doesn't mean that once you have entered your details, that means you have submitted the proposal. It only means that you are making your presence in this community, and you are also collaborating with the similar community members who can be of help to each one of us, each other in our endeavors. So please collaborate with this wonderful community through this sheet. Mention your details, mention each and everything which is required, and also go through the details of other people who are there. Maybe there could be some help while collaborating for your session proposals, or even for any other things for that matter. Nothing is fixated to only the session proposals when we talk about this collaboration sheet. This collaboration sheet is a collaboration with our community. Right now, we are talking about it because we are talking about the session proposals, and we might find some really like-minded people who can be of help in this session proposal. So I think these are really good resources. Go through it once. It will be a kind of brush up of what all we have discussed. Might be you may come up with brilliant ideas after going through these once again, and might be you will have some more queries or doubts in your mind, and feel free to reach out to us. So with this, we open the forum for the questions.
I think just briefly before that. No, that's fine. And there were so many questions and inputs I had, but the both of you were articulating everything so wonderfully that I thought let me wait till you're done with it. But just a few points, and I think some of these might have been mentioned, but I'll just repeat them. But I think really important also to remember that this is still a hybrid conference, so we still have virtual attendees, and so you might want to think about that. We will require some in-person attendance in every session, so when you're thinking about who to present with, maybe that's a factor that you might want to consider. And I think Josh, you really articulated this well. But please, we do the conference in India, but it is a global conference. There's so many people from around the world. We have the regional forum in Sri Lanka happening in a few days. Jim is really going to be part of a real big breakthrough in the first ever sort of United States based regional forum. And so it is truly global. So when you're thinking about your approach and perspective, that's something that you could keep in mind. And in this point, really, it's something that I want to make. But just remember, there's many different places where you can promote yourself and market yourself. This really isn't about promoting and marketing a particular person or organization that you work for. It's about sharing knowledge. It's about coming together and really imparting that knowledge. So I think these were 3 points that really came to my mind. But I just want to quickly summarize what Josh and Vandana have said in a few bullet points, really. But what came to mind, and Josh and Vanda, you'll resonate with this, but when we talk to our students about what makes for a good application, what do we say? It's about preparation, it's about planning. And I think when it comes to a good session proposal, that's really what came to my mind, because it's about that planning. It's about having an awareness of the sub themes and the themes this year. It's about making sure that you understand what they are and including it in the voice that you want to talk about. It's about clarity, it's about details. So every component is important. The more that you can focus on each component of the application, give the committee as much information as you can, knowing who your voices may be and what kind of structure you want to follow. So I think what really comes through is spend time, talk to other panelists that you might want to have and other voices that you might want to have in your session, but really plan and then submit the session. I think that's what's really going to make for a strong session. And I love that challenge for experienced speakers, and I'm probably going to take it myself and really challenge and do an advanced session this year, and learn through the process, but also hopefully impart some knowledge to a more advanced viewer base as well. So with that, I think just highlighting some few important dates for everyone. First and foremost, 15th of March is the super early bird registration. So that's just a few weeks now, and really make use of that deadline. Um, April 15th is going to be the deadline for the call for proposals, and we will need to be strict with these deadlines, because there's a whole process that follows in terms of assessing the proposals and the large number of proposals that come. So we cannot just extend these deadlines. So 15th of April. So make sure you've had your conversations, you've probably come together, you've decided what you want to talk about, what voice needs to come through in your sessions, if you're connecting with the sub themes and really using them as that skeleton for your sessions. And lastly, 31st of May is when we will communicate the decisions and which sessions we're going to be having at the conference. So I think those are sort of the three important days. So I think as homework, make sure you register in time. It's only beneficial, and make sure that you are aware that you submit your proposal in time, and not an incomplete proposal with all the details. So I think with that, let's take on some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and sorry, we do have to mute everyone just in terms of the ease of the session today, but we will allow you to put down some questions into chat box if you want to unmute yourself and ask some questions relating to what makes for a good session proposal. We're here, and hopefully in the next 8 to 9 minutes that we have, and really keep the time, we can hopefully answer those questions. But really, I think, as a final word, big thank you to Josh and Vandana, and to the entire content and research committee for the tremendous work that they do, and to Anuradha and the team for putting this together, and to everyone that attended today, because you've really got a good head start, and I'm sure that the session proposals that are going to come through, those in attendance today, are going to be very strong as well. So with that, any questions that we might want to answer, and happy to answer those questions. So the floor is open, and feel free to raise your hand, unmute, use the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer. But
Hi, Vir. Can I ask the question? This is Amir.
hi, yes, of course, please go ahead.
Yes. I had a session proposal in mind. I think pandemic has taught us the importance of mental health. So I'd worked on a project and proposal for counselors' mental health, but I don't know which category does it fall in. Is it appropriate to send it to the content committee for their review and seek, not formally submit it, but just send it the sort of a blueprint and ask them what's their opinion? Because I couldn't fit it in one of the 6 buckets which Vandana and Josh talked about. So how does it work out if you have a proposal which doesn't fall into the scheme of things, but you think it's important? What do we do with that? Thank you. And thank you, Josh and Vandana, this fantastic presentation. I think a lot of doubts got clarified. I've been presenting for 6 years now, but I think this is really cool. Thank you. I'm glad I joined.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's an excellent question. I've always said that certainly I'm an open book. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me at any time. I'll pop my email address into the chat box. And for a situation like this, feel free to reach out. Once a session has been proposed, we do have very strict rules about sort of how we to keep it a democratic process, how we collaborate. But prior to submitting that proposal, don't hesitate to send it our way. One of the things that pops off the top of my head, and again, it may not be the most appropriate choice, but when we talk about counselors' mental health, well, what a great idea, and how relevant it is. One of the things I would highlight is access. How do students access a counselor? And part of that is through a healthy counselor. So that may have the ability to sort of find a home in one of those buckets, as you say. But feel free to sort of reach out directly. My email address is in the chat there. give me an idea of the session proposal. I'd be delighted to offer some perspective on that. And don't be afraid to reach out as well to the folks in the collab sheet. You know, sometimes just putting it out there and say, look, I've got a great session proposal, but I'm having trouble, you know, squaring a circle here. It may take a few extra minutes with a colleague. And they'll say, gosh, you know, I was thinking of the same thing, and this is how I would frame it. But please reach out to me. We're not aloof, sitting up on some fictional chair as a chair of a committee. We're here to help and really learn from your perspective as well. Great question.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. I think I'm just going to pose another question, and you know, any of us could really come in, but it's if one can share more than one proposal under two different themes. So so I guess, yeah, you can share multiple proposals. It can be with different groups of people. It doesn't have to be the same person that you're proposing it with, and certainly that's possible. And I've in the past submitted 3-4 different session proposals, some under the same theme, some under different themes, and so that's certainly something that you could take a look at.
But I think there was a restriction of up to 2 proposals by the same person, because my 3 proposals got accepted. Yeah. But I could present only 2.
Correct, and absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. So you can present. We want new speakers, and we don't want the same person to be submitting multiple sessions. So at the conference, we will have a limit of any one person only being able to be part of 2 sessions. But that doesn't mean you can submit more session proposals. But just bear in mind that, you know, if you are selected for more than 2, then you might have to step out of one to allow for that scheduling and to allow for new voices as well. Brilliant. Yes, please go ahead.
2 or 3, it's completely fine to submit more, but while reviewing, we'll also see the strong substance, the strong abstract, and also the need to, you know, patch up diverse content of the conference. So that will also be considered. So submission is not a restriction, while selection could be.
Thank you. I think absolutely. And of course, I've all of us have put down our details there, and I've put down my conference email there. But if anyone wants to reach out, please do that, and ask any questions that you have. You know, we're here to help out and support. Any last thoughts, questions, comments?
I might jump in here, Vir. I got a direct message that was a great question, and I've responded directly in the chat. And now that I've responded, I think, gosh, what a great question. The question was, what advice would I have for a newbie? What advice would I have for someone who's new to the community? Be confident in your perspective. Those of us who have done this for a long time, and I'm certainly not the older statesman when it comes to this by any measure, but sometimes experienced members of a community need to be reminded what it was like to be new, and what may seem as a given, what may seem as something to be taken for granted for someone who's been around the block a few times is still new to you. And so when you're putting together a session proposal as a newbie, sometimes it's that great ability to remind the experienced members of the greater audience what supports you need as a new member of a community. So the most important thing I can say is don't be bashful. And I say that for everything. This goes beyond just proposing a session. I remember sitting in Amrita's office 4 or 5 years ago, and she said, I just wanted to pull you aside and tell you about IC3, and gosh, I think you'd be great. And I thought, does she have the right person? Like, does she remember who I am? Because I'm new and I don't know what I'm talking about. And I thought, well, okay, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And with a great deal of trepidation, I thought, okay, I'll become a member of the committee, and sure, I'll put together some proposals. And now I can't imagine my professional life without IC3 and this amazing community of professionals. So don't be bashful. Wonderful question, and I hope you don't mind.
Absolutely, and in fact, I think that's great. And what I would do is you know, I would answer that from my perspective, and then maybe Vandana, you can do that as well. Is what advice would you give a newbie? But I would also refer back to the sixth sub theme. I think, and that's about trends, and trends change. And an experienced counselor may not have the same up-to-date knowledge of what the trends are today, what questions are being posed to counselors today, what's changing in the economic background of a particular country that you might want to study in. But those changes happen, and maybe as a new counselor, maybe if you've just started your journey, there are these trends that you are saying that maybe we who've been in the industry for 5-6 years are taking for granted now, or we're assuming too many things. So sometimes that can be really helpful as well. So I would say, just remember, you've got a voice. I think it's really important to understand, don't just submit a session just for to say I've submitted a session. Ask yourself, what is it that I'm really trying to say? What am I trying to say through it? And I think then you start to understand and frame that session in the right manner. But Vandana, maybe last thoughts on you. What would you say to a newbie? And then, if
Yeah.
there are no other questions, then we can stick to time
Like
and
we tell our students that find your unique strength
yeah,
and then play the strength. This is what I would say, that we all have some beauty in ourselves, in our work that we are doing. First, discover that beauty within ourselves, and then find out how can I add some more knowledge and information and energy to it and present it to this wonderful community. I think that will make all the difference, because here our soul will be, with us in this journey, right? So I think that makes a difference, just like what you said, that just for the sake of submitting, I think it may go weaker. But if we are putting our soul, our own energy, strength, I'm sure it's bounced. It's definitely going to be there on the table.
absolutely. No, thank you, and really wise words there. Do we have any last comments or questions from the audience today?
Yeah, Ambika is excited. I'm so happy.
Yes, and they say practice what you preach, and I think the one thing that I'm going to take back is I'm going to take on the challenge that Vandana and Josh have issued today, and I'm going to make sure that as someone who's presented at a conference before, I'm going to go ahead and add a new voice to any session that I propose. So I'll take that on, and that's a challenge that I'm going to take on. So brilliant. No, again, a big thank you to Josh and Vandana and everyone involved in organizing this session today. Hope it clarified a few doubts and was helpful, and will encourage you to submit a strong proposal. And with that, I think it's wonderful. We're on time, and reach out if needed. So thanks again for a wonderful session.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone,
all.
for joining.
Take care.
Namaste so
Cheers.
much. Bye bye.